And I don't blame them, but that's the way it is. They were nervous as hell. I was talking to the New York Times person yesterday. You know, what can I say to him? You know,
As an attorney, you know, I don't always agree with what attorneys do or don't do, but as an attorney, you can appreciate their interest anyway. I mean, that's what they're there for.
It's never bothered me. And I'll say what I want to say. And I know what I should and shouldn't say.
No, I was going to go back to Green River, but I don't want to interrupt you.
Oh, well, Green River is, I don't know if you've read some of the letters that I've written.
I haven't seen any.
I've probably written them over 200 pages with this.
You had mentioned in the letter that you wrote to me that you had written to him and you hadn't heard a whole lot recently.
He stopped writing to me in September. I don't know why. I wrote him a 20-page letter and posed a number of ideas and looking for some feedback or something, and he never wrote back. And well, you know, he's got more to do than write to me. So and I don't take offense.
Yeah, but basically you feel that you've got an investment of your time and sharing whatever you'd like to see, what the results may or may not be.
You know, I thought that I might have something to add because I feel let's talk about a computer program. They developed this massive, they developed some kind of computer program or programs, and they told me something about what they were thinking of doing, and I don't know what else they've done. But, I mean, there are a lot of programs that I can run, okay, and I don't need to spend $2 million to do it. If I had the data, now I can realize, I understand why they can't show me stuff or tell me stuff, and I don't want to know. But just seeing those crime scene photos was something of a revelation.
Oh yeah, he wanted to see those. Of course he did.
Some of the changes the guy was going through, at least on a superficial level. To me, a superficial level, because the person that they're looking for, assuming it's one person, may still be and was then a real living, viable, breathing human being that just went about his life in a way that made sense to him. He wasn't a monster and isn't a monster. Because again, when you start using those pejorative terms and those passionate terms, he's a sick, demented person. Okay, sure. But remember, there's a lot in him that's in you.
Of course there is.
And there's nothing in this guy. There's nothing this guy has thought that you haven't thought in one way or another at one time. Okay? And he did all.
Right, for whatever reason, carried the thoughts a step further. Is your gut feeling that you brought up an interesting point? Do you think there could be more than one person responsible for this?
Well, I just don't have enough information. And what I see,
I haven't even seen all the crime scene photos, so I mean,
my gut.
give me credit for about 36 now or something like that.
Yeah.
Good round numbers.
Yeah. At least, if they have 10 or 15 more missing,
Something like that, yeah. Well,
that's really a bottom line. We're talking about a lot more. The guy didn't get killed in an automobile accident somewhere. No, it looks like one person, sure. Looks like one person.
you're mentioning, and I certainly agree with you, that the rest of us have the same kind of thoughts and perhaps feelings that individual would have. With that in mind, do you think he could have just stopped? I mean, it's been quite some time. Can a person be willing to stop and his feelings are then satisfied, his needs are suppressed or whatever? Or do you think that he's been taken out of the population and basically that's why, to our knowledge, no more have occurred?
Very good question. My response to that, a year and a half ago when I talked to him.
Was that long ago?
Well, it was October of '84. October, November of '84. I spoke to them here in this room. A couple days we talked. And then I was exercising more of a conventional wisdom about, as saying more or less based upon what I know and what I've read, no, this guy is, going to go till he burns himself out because, listen, in the year and a half he was active, at least the year and a half with the data, the evidence shows he was active from July of 84 to get my dates, 82 to December of 83, he is accredited with at least 45 people just in King County. Now that is super intense. I don't think anybody can appreciate the level of intensity that exhibits, because I don't think that's way above the mean average of frequency for serial killer. It'd be my guess. And still he avoided detection. That's an extraordinary achievement. Even though he was dealing with a very vulnerable victim class, which, it's very hard to investigate cases involving the murders of prostitutes to begin with.
It's not a real high-risk crime for the offender.
Right, it's very low risk. And even though he was just so bold as hell, I can't believe his brashness.
He's been lucky.
And lucky, and going back to the same area with all hell breaking loose, and all the prostitutes on the streets fully aware of what was going on, and continued to get victims. But could he stop though? I have thought about that. We know so little, and I wondered, is it possible? Would it be possible under those circumstances, as intense and as into it as he obviously was? Could he stop? We know so little about the behavior patterns of persons who commit serial murder. I mean, on a grand scale. I mean, it's not like you can go to you're a behavioral scientist and you just invite a whole bunch of people into a room and have them fill out questionnaires. I mean, there's just so much that's unknown. But I think I don't think it's inconceivable that could happen. I don't think it's inconceivable. Just as people change behavior drastically and are transformed for whatever reason, whether they live lives where they're alcoholics or whatever their personal problem might be. I think there are instances in life that we all have seen where people had serious problems and just came to grips with them and dealt with them and stopped. Now, most people aren't able to do that, but I agree. I mean, most people just go on until, they're arrested, or, they're alcoholics, or, they lose their job, or they get a divorce, or some crisis happens in their lives. But there are people, I think, who are capable, for whatever reason, of facing up to, the difficulties they're having and the distortions of their minds, and reforming themselves. Now, I think this is highly unlikely, but I don't think it's inconceivable. But again, you just don't know. And it would be extraordinary if someday you found out this guy just stopped, But,
Speak in terms of equating it like with alcoholism, which may not be like an escape or whatever for people, and it's difficult for them to overcome it, but occasionally it can. And like a serial murder, at least from my own personal perception of the Green River case and some others like it, appears to be a crime, behavior, activity, whatever, of almost a power. And I would use the word possession, total possession. That's the way I perceive people who are serial murderers, whom we would term organized, so to speak, and you're certainly familiar with it, how we categorize people. I can't envision what goes on in their mind when they're actually controlling and killing, okay, and whatever else may or may not be involved, whether it be playing out a sexual fantasy or exploration or whatever, but the actual being there at the moment that life is gone. To me, it's almost like a total possession. That person would be mine. No one else in the world can control that person. There's nothing that person can do anymore for themselves. Totally in my hands. Okay. They left this earth in my hands. They had no choice. No one could stop me at that particular time. I can only imagine that it's almost, in a sinister way, a society would look at it, but almost a euphoric feeling. And a person that's so active as this guy has been, if he is due the credit that has been given to him, I can't think of anyone else in our society who has been basically given credit for that many in that short a period of time. it must be just a tremendous drive, almost a need for this stealing and possession. I don't think it's so much to just eliminate a life. I mean, there were easier victims for him to find. Prostitutes are certainly high and highly visible. He could have taken children, could have taken elderly people or something like that in another way. But the ones he was choosing basically are very spirited folks. They're outgoing. They're out on the streets constantly dealing with other people. It's a challenge for him. They're going to fight back a little bit, but he just totally controlled them. And I just wonder, to me, I just can't equate it so much with like alcoholism or a habit or something. Can you actually get that out of your system? I mean, is that possible to stop? I mean, that's been one of the real big burning questions for us. You know, we look at ages, of course, and activity. Does a person like this start to burn out at some point? Or what? I don't know what
I think you're right on in your questions. I can understand.
I'm asking an awful lot of questions.
Oh, sure. I can see where your mind's going, and I see that you're probing and you're trying to understand, and you're dealing, you know, with some very important kinds of issues and concepts. But don't sell yourself short. You can understand. Okay, you can understand because in your own way, there are things in your own life you've experienced that kind of intensity and that kind of a power. Maybe you have problems, or anybody has problems they can't control. And I don't mean to demean or diminish the seriousness of what happened, say, in the Green River case. It was obviously a very serious, tragic situation. But to that person who's doing it, it makes sense at the time. And who knows what all the emotions and the passions and the mental images that are rushing through his mind before, during, and after. This is, of course, extremely important from both a behavioral scientist's point of view and a law enforcement's point of view. But you can begin to get inside this man's head if you try to use personal experiences as a guide to a certain extent. And I guess there's no way to know precisely what he thought or what he did until he tells you. And I think what's going through the Green River killer's head to the point where I was just driving myself nuts. Why? Why this and not that? Why prostitutes and not children or old people? Why the river? Why the mountains? You know.
Now you know what a profiler goes through. Exactly.
And you just don't have the data to make those kinds of decisions. For instance, let me give you an idea. When I was talking to Bob Keppel, they said, do you think this guy would keep the stuff he's taking from the victims? You know, the personal possessions that apparently we weren't finding any. I said, well, yeah, maybe not. But you don't know. You don't have any information really to say for sure one way or the other. And if you have a hot suspect and he doesn't have anything, that doesn't mean he's not the person. On the other hand, if you have a hot suspect and you search his apartment, you find lockers full of stuff, well, you've got him, all right? So it doesn't really, it's an important thing to keep in mind, but don't torture yourselves over it because there's no way to know. You have no information. One interesting thing they did find that they said, you know, we found a couple miles away from the site where this victim was found, we found her driver's license. So what do you think was happening there? Were they fighting? This is what they told me. Now I don't know if they're being straight with me. This was one of the victims named Kimmy Pitts or something was found in the Kent Valley. We found her driver's license over here, you know, on the side of freeway. What was going on? I said, well, I don't know, but you know, I seriously doubt they were fighting. I don't think very many of these victims had a chance to fight with the guy. He was very, very efficient in whatever he was doing. I mean, this is really the extraordinary accomplishment, if you want to look at it, of this particular individual that nobody that anybody knows of that I am aware of got away from him. And considering the streetwise nature of the people he's up against, it's quite I say an accomplishment in quotes.
What is?
You know,
that's a good word to use. It is an accomplishment.
Certainly not, not a positive one, but an accomplishment nonetheless.
But you get a definite public and media sensitivity in that part of the country right now, and has been for several years. So that you've got basically the media linking them sometimes prior to the investigators linking them. Justified or not, but it's borne out in the end sometimes that they are linked. We've had many inquiries from different parts of the country where the media is putting homicides together and unjustifiably so, they just didn't know what the hell they were talking about. And other times they come in and I've talked to investigators and they said, oh, there's no way they're related. 3 months later, there's no doubt they were related. Sure. Awareness up there, for sure.
I would be surprised if, no, thank you. If publicity about these kinds of crimes has a contagious effect. I'm not saying that if someone were to read accounts of these kinds of murders, that they're going to go out and try to emulate them necessarily. But I think it's part of the entire constellation of influences, pressures, and stresses, what have you, on a given individual that just come into play that are going to ultimately result in him acting out fantasies that result in him committing serial murders. And it intends to live in an area where there are these kinds of activities going on in combination with, let's say, other influences, whether it be, personal problems or abuse or low self-image or, God knows what goes into the final formula on any given individual. It's very complex and perhaps incomprehensibly complex interaction of forces, but maybe it's exposure, violence in the media, or maybe it's pornography, or maybe it's just all kinds of things acting together with being able to read about something that's really happening and saying, hey, and sort of coming to accept it as a norm. And there's also something in, I think this kind of stuff can also attract people to an area. Say, well, it happens here and people don't get caught. Maybe I should go up there and see what's going on. But I think more, well, years ago, I mean, if you were to, let's say you're a guy who's just got these fantasies about, going out and abducting women, you really haven't ever acted them out, you're not sure what's what. So you go down to the local magazine shop and what are you going to indulge your fantasies in? I said this to you, you may have read it in the transcripts. If you're a fisherman, you go down to the magazine store and you pick up a fishing magazine. Or a skier, you're going to read about skiing and look at it on the tube. Well, if your thing, at least on a fantasy level, or even in reality, is going out and killing and abducting people, well, perhaps you're going to indulge that fantasy vicariously by reading about it or seeing film, movies about it, or whatever, indulges it vicariously. So he goes down, he reads, say, the detective magazine, and he sees, well, there's a whole series of these kinds of crimes going on down in California, hitchhikers in California, or whatever. And a light might go on. Gee, I hadn't thought of that before. And that'll become a part of the fantasy process. It may or may not. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's just one scenario.
You think there's a particular point in that person's development, whether it be age-wise or life experience-wise or whatever, where all that starts clicking together and he sees that this is my life's work, or this is what I need to do, or do you perceive that it comes on all at once in this kind of person, or he just gradually escalates to it?
Again, I'd be reluctant to speculate. However, my sense is, and it's not based on a lot of information, right? My sense is it's gradual. It isn't something that happens overnight. What brings a person to the point where he acts out of fantasy? Is, he's probably, if you can figure out that puzzle, where he goes from thinking about it to doing it. Why and how that occurs is a puzzle that you can find a solution to that might be all you need to unravel the whole ball of wax. What brings a person to that point is a mystery. What brings a person to the point where they say they transform their whole lives and they feel like they're born again, right? What brings a person to the point when they feel like they're seeing life for the first time and they're ready to start turning themselves around? I mean, it has something to do with the human character where I think we just, whether for good or evil, we become ready. We become ready. I'm ready to start doing things right. I'm ready to stop drinking and stop fooling around and straighten my life up. Or I'm ready to go out and I'm just ready. I don't know why. I'm just ready to go out and kill somebody tonight. Or try anyway. I may not do it. I may screw up because I have never done it before. It's like anything else. You've got to start somewhere. And so when you start somewhere, it's like if you're a skier, you may have been dreaming about skiing all your life, reading the magazines, thinking about it, watching Warren Miller films and everything. And a day comes and you say, well, I don't know, I can try it. Well, you're going to go to the bunny toe hill and you're going to fall down. You're going to fall down unless you're very, very good. And there are some people who get up skis and go right down the hill. And there are some who struggle.
Someone will pick a very high hill the first time, and others will start on a small slope.
And some will take lessons.
Some will take lessons, actually. Okay. On a person, like a serial killer, okay, that's fantasized, maybe read, maybe seen movies, dreamt, whatever. That kind of person likely to start on the slope. In other words, pick a more defenseless victim. Start with a representative victim, whether it be just toying around with a doll or something like that, or will they go right to the highest mountain and actually attempt, and if this is a crime of possession, that's what I'm calling it. I don't know if you agree with me, that's the way I see some of these serial murders. Are they going to go right to the type of individual that they've been fantasizing about weeks, months, years, or whatever?
Yeah, I hear you. Let me say, I think it's useful to explore these kinds of ideas and concepts, but I always have to remind myself that I don't fall into the trap of getting into stereotypes because each individual is different. I know that sounds like a cliche, but it isn't. And if I start getting an idea that every person goes about it the same way, then I fall into that trap of thinking, well, that I know how that person is thinking. And I really don't. I know how I think and how I can put myself into that person's mind if I know enough, if I have enough facts. Something to go on. Yeah, something to go on.
Remember, Bundy had a psychology undergrad degree.
With that in mind, then I can try to work it out a theory like you just posed. As to whether, is he going to start with an easy victim and go to something he's looking for? I don't,
He's always so polite.
We can talk about all these, and I think it's useful to develop the mental equipment to be able to, and maybe sharpen your perceptions. And so when you go out in the field and you're confronted with a real life situation, with all the stuff that an investigator comes up against, that comes into play, and you can see things that maybe other people won't see, or you won't fall prey to the temptation of trying too hard to overlay some preconceptions over it. Well, this is what he's like or isn't like, and narrow your view in such a way that you might overlook, or you might not see what you're looking for. You're making him fit your mold. And with all due respect, I think that's one of the great dangers of profiling. What if you're off just a little bit?
Sure.
Okay.
That's why we try to profile cases we try to never do them just by ourselves. We usually try to have at least 2 or 3 other people around, one of whom will play the devil's advocate and say, I think you all are off for this reason. And when we do finish up, and we certainly could be wrong, we're just on the threshold, hopefully, of getting these insights that we want. It's a group decision. In other words, we've got 3 or 4 people saying, well, we consider this and that, but based upon probability, based upon what experience we've had, based upon what exposure we've had, speaking to folks on experiences in investigators and in research projects, this is what the state of the art is right now. This is what we perceive it to be. But it's an interesting insight. When I sit down and try to do one myself, I'm going to be very careful that I don't fall. I try to put myself into the mind, the soul of the perpetrator.
I hear you.
But, I try to look at
Do you?
as he did. I don't necessarily try to understand him at that particular point. I only want to try to beat him for a while. Write down what I do next, and then try to step back and think, oh, if that's true, then why did that happen? And that's the second part of it. So you're right. You've got to be very careful.
Plus, that is not saying concrete, that, that changes.
Absolutely right.
And of course, the idea is an art and a science. I mean, ideally, I guess when you're confronted with this kind of a problem, you would go out there and the people who would be most effective would almost work on a gut level, on an intuitive level, where they weren't just going through the motions of following what they learned in police school. If they really have a sixth sense about what's happening, what they're looking for, they're able to see beyond the obvious.
We really haven't gotten into some of the questions that we would ask on a research project. I don't know how much time you'll have to spend with us. Kind of quite a thorough thing here, an instrument which it's kind of a guarded thing at this particular point, but I'm more than willing to let you take a look at it, just to get your own gut feeling, so you feel comfortable not going over some of the materials. But if we do get into this today, or depending upon what your schedule is, and your
Boy, he would love that.
we do have a form, and this is not an advice of rights waiver in any shape or form.
Yeah.
That we ask
They're going to give him the data.
See if they're comfortable with
This is where he gets the photos.
Peruse that for a few
Yeah.
minutes if you can.
So
And they
tell
told
them
me
what he
that
used
you were here and
them
scheduled
for.
to be with me all day, and that really ticked them off. No, we can't spend all day.
No, what we're just saying is that they've given us the opportunity to use this office all day
Right.
if we want to. So, we'll stop whenever you want to stop. But, there will be people walking back and forth out there, but basically the colonel has said, if he's got time, and he'd like to stay all day, you can stay all day, so we're on your schedule.
No, it's the timing for us getting together is kind of bad because I've got a lot of things we were involved in, and my attorney's going to be here today, and I'll be busy all day tomorrow.
Sure.
With visits and interviews and what have you. And it's not an atmosphere that's conducive to gearing my mind to thinking about.
All right, it sounds like they're about done. All right, hey, thanks for joining me. I think these little videos, insights into the mind of depravity, is something most people are interested in because we can't understand that which we aren't. So, thanks for joining me again. My name's Chris, Bama Law, and we'll see y'all next time. Thanks.